Section 73 of A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.S. Kim, Seoul, South Korea. A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4 by Henry Charles LEA. Book 9, Chapter 1, Conclusion, Decadence and Extinction, Part 5. The Junta Central, which endeavored to govern amid much opposition from the particularist tendencies of the provincial juntas, retired to Cadiz when the French occupied Andalusia. On January 1, 1810, it issued a convocation for the assembling of Cortes, and on the 31st, it dissolved after appointing a regency and imposing on it the duty of convoking the Cortes by March 1st. The regency delayed until, forced by the pressure of public opinion on June 18th, it published a decree ordering elections where they had not been held, and summoning the deputies to meet in August in Isla de León, now San Fernando near Cadiz. Suffrage was virtually universal, and in the letters of convocation the nation was called upon to assemble in general Cortes to establish and improve the fundamental constitution of the monarchy, while the commissions of the delegates empowered them to decide all points contained in the letters and all others without exception or limitation. The Cortes accordingly assumed the title of Majesty, as embodying the will of the people and occupying the throne of the absent sovereign. When they were opened, September 24th, about 100 deputies were present, 2/3 of whom were elected by the provinces not occupied by the French armies, and the rest selected in Cadiz from among natives of the unrepresented district, including the colonies, then more or less in open revolt, while, as the vicissitude of the war permitted, deputies came straggling in from districts unrepresented at first. As a whole, the body fairly reflected existing public opinion. The liberals numbered 45, and the majority consisted of ecclesiastics, men of the privileged classes and government employees. It was an unavoidably hazardous experiment, this sudden wrenching of Spain from the old moorings and launching it on the tempestuous waters of modern idea, under the conduct of men without training or experience in self-government. Grave mistakes were inevitable, and their constructive work was idealistic and doomed to failure, a failure bound to result in blood and misery. At the moment, however, there were no misgivings, and the Cortes were regarded as the salvation of the nation. The oath administered to members bound them to maintain Catholicism as the exclusive religion of Spain, and to preserve for their beloved monarchy Fernando VII and all his dominion. Their first act was to adopt a series of 5 resolutions, offered by an ecclesiastic, Diego Munoz Torero, a rector of University of the Salamanca, of whom one provided that the regency should be continued as the executive power, on taking an oath recognizing the sovereignty of the nation as embodied in the Cortes, and promising obedience to their enactment. Rather than do this, the regency proposed to break up the Cortes, but the threatening aspect of the people and the army caused a change of heart, and that same night they took the oath, except the implacable conservative Quevedo, Bishop of Orense, who resigned both from the regency and the Cortes. His resignations were accepted, but he was forced to take the oath required of all prelates and officials before he was allowed to retire to his diocese. It was evident that the Cortes and the regency could not pull together. On October 28, the latter was dismissed, and its membership was reduced from 5 to 3, and a new regency was installed with which the Cortes could work in harmony. After settling relations with other departments of the state, the first attention of the Cortes was given to the freedom of press. 2 days after the opening session, the subject was introduced and referred to a committee. No time was lost. A decree was reported October 8th, and on the 18th, in spite of the reclamation of the opposition, it was passed by a vote of 68 to 32. This was regarded as a preliminary attack on the Inquisition, which was thus deprived by the implication of the function of censorship. Some members desired this to be explicitly stated, giving rise to the hot debate in which Inquisitor Riesco, a member of Cortes, pleaded in vain for some honorable mention of the Holy Office. There was also indignation excited by the provision subjecting prohibition by the bishops to revision by secular power, which was subversive of the imprescriptible rights of the Church, whose judgments are final. If this was really the first move in a campaign against the Inquisition, it was not unskilful, for it set at liberty the pens which had hitherto been restrained. At once there arose a crowd of pamphleteers and journalists, not only in Cadiz but throughout Spain, who attacked the Inquisition unsparingly, raising a clamor which showed how severe had been the repression. Sturdy defenders were not lacking, and the worldly war was vigorously waged. The two most prominent champions on either side were Antonio Puig, who, under the pseudonym of Nathanael Homtop, collected under the title of La Inquisición sin Máscara, or the Inquisition Unmasked, and Padre Maestro Fray Francisco Alvarado, a Dominican of high repute for learning and eloquence, whose letters under the name of El Filósofo Rancio, or Antiquated Philosopher, continued for 2 years to keep up the struggle against all innovations of the liberals. Puig was no exception to the general rule that those who attacked the Inquisition was careful to profess the highest veneration for the faith, and in no way to advocate toleration. His work commences with an eloquent description of religion as the foundation of all civil constitution, and Catholicism as the noblest adornment of enlightenment and liberty, the only question being whether the Inquisition was the fitting institution for its protection. He is careful to maintain to the last his abhorrence of heresy and his desire for its suppression, which he proposes to effect by reviving episcopal jurisdiction under certain limitations. With all this, his denunciation of the Inquisition was unsparing, and he had ample store of atrocities with which to justify his attacks, although there was unfairness in attributing to it in the 19th century the cruelties which had stained its previous career. Alvarado was a man of extensive learning, not of little claim to the title of philosopher, whether antiquated or modern. Though his methods were not such as to make converts, they were well adapted to stimulate those of his own side, for he was an effective partisan writer, fluent, sarcastic, open course, vulgar, and vituperative, using assertion for argument and indifferent as to truth. The chief value of his letters is the flood of light which they shed on the conservative attitude of the time, which explains much in the subsequent vicissitude of Spain. Philosophers, he says, are wolves, robbers and devils, monsters which cannot be regarded without horror, enlighteners who are nothing but ignoramuses and cheats and emissaries sent by hell. To seek to undermine popular confidence in the priesthood he holds to be a crime greater than the crucifixion of Christ. The ferocity of his intolerance shows how little Spanish churchmen had changed since the days of Torquemada. As to the relations of religion and the state, he assumes that the only function of the civil power is to punish him who offend the faith. The Catholic religion is as intolerant as light is of darkness, or as truth is of falsehood, and this intolerance distinguishes it from all religions invented by men. Repeatedly and savagely he proclaims that burning is the proper remedy for unbelief, and he tells his adversaries that if they wish free thought, they may go to England or to the United States. But in Spain, what they had to expect was the quemadero. Such advocacy could only render the liberals more eager to accomplish their work. End of section 73.